Kawaki's newest power-up is honestly the anime version of giving an angry teenager unlimited access to a pre-workout and then acting completely surprised when he starts asking, "Hey fam, where's the stronger stuff at?" Or being shocked when their heart basically explodes from taking the entire tub of Super Pump Max in one serving. Because if there is one thing that Kawaki has proven throughout Boruto Two Blue Vortex, is that every time that he gets stronger, his immediate reaction isn't mission accomplished. It's how much stronger can I get? Because the goalpost keeps moving. There is always a new threat that Naruto has to be protected from, and that hamster wheel of a brain inside his mind that is running off of Bolivian marching powder and a photo of Naruto positioned to be in his eyesight while he's running on that hamster wheel. And unfortunately for the rest of the ninja world, he just found the one man willing to answer that question about how much stronger he can get. The scary thing isn't that Kawaki got a new power-up in this chapter. This is a battle shonen. We are used to power-ups. Instead, this is a power-up that practically guarantees it won't be his last one. And why, when the time comes to fight Boruto during the flash forward sequence, Kawaki is about to learn a crucial aspect of Shinobi culture that he keeps downplaying, and it's gonna end up being his downfall. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explain video where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, takes a look at why Kawaki's new power-up does change the battle with Boruto in the flash forward sequence, but not in the way that Kawaki wants. Also, the chapter reviews should be up on the channel by the time you guys are seeing this, so I'll leave it linked in the description box and in credits along with my new video on my Everything One Piece Explained channel. So, jumping back into the video, Amado has accidentally created the world's most dangerous gym membership and given its first recipient a lifetime supply of sketchy supplements and ripped off all the warning labels in the process. He just promised Kawaki in order to power up, "You've got to listen to me," and Kawaki said, "Hold on a second, you had me at the words power up, you four-eyed daughter-obsessed freak." When Chapter 35 of Two Blue Vortex revealed the details behind Kawaki's latest upgrade, the immediate reaction from a lot of fans was that Kawaki had finally reached his ceiling now that he got the very thing he asked for so long in this story. After all, Amado outright explains, "Kawaki, you can now officially use 100% of Isshiki's offensive capabilities," and that, my friends, is very frightening to think about. On paper, that sounds pretty final. It should be the moment where Kawaki, all the memes, they basically go off to pasture and they die alongside any hope that Metal Leaf fans have that he will show up in the manga after not being in it for 7 years. Like, how exactly do you go beyond 100%? Most people will look at you and say, you can't, 100% is final. And here's the thing, anyone treating Amado's explanation like it's a statement about Kawaki's limits, in my opinion, is going about this entire thing wrong. It wasn't that at all. There isn't a finality to this level of power. This was basically Kawaki being a brand new homeowner, if you will, which I'm going to use a quick finance example to explain what I mean. Not financial advice, but just give you a taste of what you'll get whenever I decide to share that finance channel with you guys I have. So, remember how Amado compared Kawaki's weaponized karma seal to being like a house. Isshiki's chakra was housed inside of Kawaki's body, but without the karma seal, he had no way to turn the key to unlock the door to the power after Isshiki, the previous owner of the house, passed away. Well, Kawaki isn't just any regular homeowner in this scenario. He's that homeowner who got a fully paid off house after a loved one passed away, either through a will that was probated at probate court or an affidavit of heirship that was filed on the property, and he was the sole remaining heir, so he got 100% interest in the property. A paid off house means that you have 100% equity into the property without ever having done anything, meaning a home equity line of credit can be taken out, and you can use the money taken out via that line of credit to purchase things to improve the house or purchase cheaper properties to rent out to generate passive income. Sticking to that example and relating it back to chakra, since Amado compared Isshiki's chakra to a home, a shinobi would take the latter approach. building a system of passive income that compounds over time to generate long-term wealth. Kawaki isn't a shinobi. He's the person who takes that line of credit and uses it on himself to either buy a car for short-term pleasure, which in this case is being strong enough to kill his enemies, and takes whatever is left over to upgrade the house, which is what I think Kawaki is going to do here. He isn't stopping at 100% of Isshiki's chakra. I think the story makes that much very clear in terms of for us as readers. Think about what Amado really was saying to us in the chapter from a narrative perspective. It wasn't a statement about you reached your limit forever. You can never go beyond this point where you're at now. It was a statement about Amado's current settings for Kawaki. Those are two very different things. Amado didn't say that Kawaki reached the maximum amount of his power that could never exist inside of his body. What Amado actually explained is that he redistributed how Kawaki's power is being allocated. Previously, part of Isshiki's power was constantly being diverted towards defense. Based on what we saw, 15%, but after we go back and look at the story, we saw that 15% after Amado lowered it before the Jura fight, which means it could have been as much as 20%, if not higher. It might have been a 50-50 split. Now, Amado can shift those percentages around however he wants. If Kawaki is sitting around doing nothing, Amado can place 100% of that power into defensive capabilities. If Kawaki enters combat, Amado can redirect everything into offense. And because Amado has all those toads that are attached to Kawaki's body, which can be shrank down to 1 inch in size, he can continue adjusting those settings whenever he wants. Notice the problem. That isn't a power-up. That is basically a software update, and anyone who has an iPhone knows that those updates don't just stop. They keep on every so often, and eventually you have to get a new phone because you can't use the newest update. Not saying that Kawaki's going to go to that point, but I am saying that he's going to keep getting those updates until he can't update anymore. Amado essentially gave himself remote access to one of the most powerful cyborgs on the planet. That should terrify everybody, especially if Amado has more than a shutdown code programmed into Kawaki. Do we really think that Amado would just stop at shutting someone down? Control would be the next logical step to take if Amado hasn't already inserted something like that into Kawaki's body. In life, once someone has access to controls, there's no reason to assume that they'll ever stop tinkering, because human beings by nature are, for the most part, never satisfied with what they have. If they were, expressions like manifest destiny would never exist. Mistakes like Alexander the Great towards the end of his life, they never would have existed. This is especially the case for someone like Amado. Let's be honest, Amado doesn't just necessarily build things, he upgrades things. That's his entire character when you think about it. Look no further than his own daughter. It wasn't enough just to clone her. He upgraded her body on top of that. And when the personality of the clone came out to be Delta, he wasn't surprised. Though, granted, a totally different personality would be a deal breaker for me too. But notice it wasn't just enough to try to outright clone her. He still had to modify the body because he is the human embodiment of good enough is never enough. Every major achievement associated with them comes from taking something that already exists and pushing it far beyond its original parameters. For Kawaki, this won't be enough either, because there's a giant problem standing in front of everyone. His name is Jura, and Jura is still the strongest thing walking around in this story. He played with Boruto, and once he got annoyed with him, he knocked him unconscious with only a few hits and would have killed him if Boruto hadn't been saved by Kawaki. And when Kawaki was fighting Jura, the guy pulled out a book mid-fight and said, "Sit your bitch ass down before I get upset, because I'm just trying to talk to you about this emotion called love and how your desire to protect Naruto suddenly made you so much stronger." Even after Kawaki's newest upgrade, there's no evidence to suggest that he can suddenly march up to Jura and beat him in a straight up fight. In fact, the story keeps kind of giving us the opposite impression. Every appearance that Jura makes in the manga it keeps reminding people that the power scaling, it still exists. The gap is still there. Jura keeps being presented like Beerus from the Dragon Ball Super manga. He's on a sliding scale, which creates a problem for Amado, because if Kawaki loses, Amado loses. Remember, Amado's goals are directly tied to Kawaki. His plans and leverage, they are also tied to Kawaki. If Jura becomes too much of a threat, Amado has every incentive in the world to keep modifying Kawaki, because losing Kawaki means losing the one thing that he has been obsessed to for so long, the revival of his daughter. And that's where things get very interesting, because everyone keeps focusing on the 100% threshold. I don't think that's the real story at all. It's like expecting Naruto to be content once he brought Sasuke back to the village and fulfilled the promise of a lifetime, and it was pretty much understood he was going to be Hokage. No, Naruto kept going. He became Hokage off screen in the Naruto manga between chapter 699 and chapter 700, and we saw him performing the duties of Hokage in chapter 700, and then we saw even more in the epilogue chapters. The real story is whether Kawaki eventually decides that 100% isn't enough, and if that ends up being the case, will Amado agree with him and enable him? Because science and literature has always followed one rule. The moment scientists think that they've reached a limit, they immediately start looking for ways to break that limit. That's basically practically Orochimaru's autobiography. If somebody sat down and went through the Orochimaru files, they would see that. He kept chasing forbidden jutsu, and somewhere in the Boruto era, he's probably doing the same thing again, reading some forbidden scroll and wondering how he can alter the jutsu that he's researching. Kawaki is no different in his pursuit of power to protect Naruto, and Amado is no different in his desire to get Kawaki over the finish line because he needs to revive his daughter. This means Kawaki's future probably involves more modifications, additional upgrades and enhancements, if you will, potentially Shibai cells, and probably a few meetings that Amado that look suspiciously similar to somebody sneaking off to meet their dealer behind the convenience store or behind the gym. At this point, Kawaki doesn't even need power-ups anymore. He gets drugs in the form of ninja tech upgrades, which is literally what the toad on his body is, a literal ninja tool meant to regulate his chakra levels for offense or defensive purposes. The scary thing is that Amado will probably keep giving Kawaki everything that he wants moving forward, because from Amado's perspective, stronger Kawaki equals safer Kawaki, and safer Kawaki equals a higher chance of achieving his goals. It's basically chain logic when you think about it. He can fight the Shinju, and when he's got his guard lowered, he can prevent him from turning into Isshiki the wrong way if somebody decides to catch him slipping one day and cosplay as Kaguya. But here's where the story becomes way more interesting than just simple power scaling. Because I think the manga is deliberately setting Kawaki up for a lesson, a painful lesson at that. A lesson that Naruto's been teaching since part 1 that a lot of fans overlook or, just being blunt, have forgotten. Science has limits. Humans, in particular human will, it doesn't. Let's go back to Naruto versus Neji. On paper, Neji should have won. He had the superior talent. He had the mastery of chakra that was superior. Yet Naruto broke through. Why? Because emotion amplified his chakra. He was too stubborn to give up, and he rattled Kurama's cage and told the guy, "Stop being a bum. I don't care that you're locked up behind bars right now. You don't get to be a bum." And he said, "Give me some chakra," and then Naruto hit Neji so hard that he got character development. That's one example, but there are multiple others that show the desire to protect someone amplifies the chakra of somebody when they're fighting for someone that they love or an ideal that they cherish. The series never treated chakra like a battery that's only meant for ninjutsu, but many fans likely view it that way, especially if you're one of the fans that only played the Ninja Storm games and you saw chakra being used for jutsu and you said, "Okay, I'm caught up, time to start Boruto." That's part of the problem with using the games to get caught up on the series. Naruto is a series treated chakra like a extension of the human spirit, because it quite literally is, due to half the fact that half of a person's chakra comes from their spirit, their yin chakra, which is their heart, which is their emotions. It's their mental state of mind. All of those times Naruto kept saying, I'm going to be the Hokage one day, before he beat someone into submission, that wasn't just spoon feeding that he's got a Hokage goal. It was Naruto strengthening his resolve, which by extension gave a small mental amp in the process. That is something that is rooted in Japanese culture. It's the concept of kotodama. There is power in words. Naruto is getting a power by saying that Hokage talk. That's part of why Shinobi constantly perform miracles. That's why characters at times have suddenly found strength that they didn't know that they possess. It's why the Uchiha clan, a clan powered by love, literally transforms their eyes and unlocks more power when their emotions go into overdrive. And I'm not just talking about the Mangekyo Sharingan. The stronger the emotion that the Uchiha feel, the stronger their Sharingan gets. That is directly told to us and shown to us in the manga itself. That's why Naruto's world has always operated on emotional logic as much as physical logic. It was low-key brilliant. It makes sense too. What is chakra? Half a chakra is yang chakra, physical. Half a chakra is yin chakra, i.e. mental, emotional, spiritual. And Kawaki doesn't understand that. And it's actually a lot worse than that. It's not that he doesn't just understand it. He rejects it. Kawaki fundamentally disrespects Shinobi culture, which is ironic considering that he literally is wearing Boruto's headband around his waist, and he's the student of one of the greatest Shinobi in the history of the Naruto world, and arguably the most accomplished Shinobi in history, Naruto Uzumaki. The kid wears Shinobi culture like a fashion accessory while completely missing the point of what it represents. To Kawaki, power is something external. Power comes from modifications. Power comes from technology. Power comes from somebody else giving it to him. But Shinobi, they see power different. Power comes from conviction. Power comes from love. Power comes from bonds. Power comes from protecting what is precious to you. Power comes from protecting someone who is precious to you. Power comes from finding strength that you didn't know existed. Power lets you push past your limits long after you've hit your wall physically and emotionally. Again, both sides of your chakra. And in Two Blue Vortex, it's been quietly hammering that idea home. Look at Himawari versus Jura. Look at Sarada versus Hidari. Look at Sarada versus Ryu. Look at Boruto once he began training with Kashin Koji and how he was told how dire the future was, how Boruto got stronger rapidly. None of their biggest moments came from somebody adjusting a power setting like Amado did with Kawaki. Their biggest moments came through emotional breakthroughs. Sarada awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Himawari accessed greater power because of those feelings. Boruto continuously grows stronger because of the people he's trying to save. The manga keeps contrasting these characters to Kawaki. Selfless advancement versus selfish advancement. One side gains strength through human connection. The other side gains strength through artificial enhancement. One side embraces their humanity. The other side is rejecting it without realizing that it's ever done so. And eventually those two philosophies, they're going to collide. That's why I think Kawaki's next power-up is inevitable. But I also think it is destined to fail. Not because the power itself will fail, but because it won't solve the underlying problem. Every upgrade Amado gives Kawaki addresses symptoms, and none of them address the disease. The disease is Kawaki's mindset. Until Kawaki addresses that, he will continue to hit walls. The disease is his inability to understand what makes Shinobi special. The disease is believing power alone can solve every problem, and Jura might be the person who finally forces him to confront that flawed reality. Because what if the final gap between Kawaki and everyone else isn't raw power? What if it is purpose? What if the thing that Kawaki lacks isn't another upgrade? What if it's something that Naruto tried teaching him years ago? The value of bonds, the value of trust, the value of fighting for people instead of fighting out of obsession and out of fear. Because once science hits its limits, Shinobi have always found another trump card. They surpass their limits anyway. That's the lesson Rock Lee taught us against Gaara. That's the lesson Naruto taught us multiple times in the story. That's the lesson Might Guy taught us against Jubi Madara. And it's the lesson that Kawaki keeps refusing to learn. That's why Amado will continuously keep to upgrade him. The story practically is demanding it. We need that mentality so that we can finally get the moment where Boruto tells Kawaki, I'm still a shinobi after hearing the age of the shinobi is over. The escalation against Jura, it demands it. The narrative demands it. But every enhancement is probably bringing Kawaki closer to the realization he doesn't want to hear. No amount of ninja tech can manufacture the human spirit. And the day that Kawaki finally understands that might end up becoming the day he becomes stronger than any upgrade Amado can give him. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Click here on the left, check out the chapter review, or click here on the right to check out this video for my Everything One Piece Explained channel.